Hello,
Hi, is this Jen?
this is.
Hi, Jen. This is Lauren from News 1130. How are you?
Oh, I'm okay. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Hey, thanks for agreeing to talk to me. Do you mind if I record this call and I might use some of it on the air?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Just gonna turn it on then. Okay, thanks for calling. So, I just had a couple questions about your presentation. So, have you? What's the presentation about in your mind? Just briefly.
Well, it's kind of summarized on my talk page on my website, but basically it goes over various aspects of not only SOGI 123, but other transgender related laws and programs in our society that are, in my opinion, endangering women's rights, endangering our most vulnerable children, and trampling other rights.
Okay. So the thing that I'm interested in is your next event in Surrey is for Christians only, it says on the event. Is that something that you decided, or is that something the church asked for?
That was my decision or my request. So I don't know if you followed what happened to me in Victoria, but we had essentially a very large mob of LGBTQ activists who came in and behaved very badly, including swearing, foul language, all kinds of offensive behavior. Now, I want to be able to communicate my message to Christians who should be concerned about some of the issues I'm talking about, but I want to be able to do that in a respectful, controlled environment and not get into the kind of chaos that I encountered in Victoria. So I had requested from the church, and basically that they allow me to have a Christian focused talk where I could control the environment and not have this type of behavior.
Okay. So did you have Christian-only events before, or is this in direct response to what happened in Oak Bay?
Oh no, I've had other Christian-only events. I had an event in New Westminster last year, which I think you addressed or covered briefly. But in our other Christian, like I started doing Christian talks maybe a year and a half ago, and early on we allowed protesters to come into the building, but some of them started behaving badly. So I basically decided that I didn't want people coming in and behaving badly in what is essentially a sacred environment that needs to be respected. So that's when I started saying, okay, well, let's make this only Christians, and if LGBTQ protesters or anybody else wants to go and listen to one of my talks, they can go to one of my public talks.
Okay. So LGBTQ people, they can't come to this one, but they can go to the other one?
They can go to any of my public talks. They're welcome to come as long as they observe the law. So what happened in Victoria was that we had Section 176 and Section 430 of the Canadian Criminal Code being flagrantly violated during the course of that talk. So I only want people who are going to come to listen, not to deliberately disrupt my event, because if they do, then they'll be asked to leave or removed if necessary.
I have spoken to people who are LGBTQ, and they said that they just wanted to go and see what was happening, but they felt like they weren't even allowed to go in. So if someone is LGBTQ, are they allowed to go to a Christians only event?
Okay, so I have all kinds of talks coming up all over the Lower Mainland over the next couple of months here. So far, all of them, except for this one, are public events. So they are free to go to any one of those events. But because this event is in a church, which I want to be a polite, respectful environment, I've decided that I want to set priority for Christians first. Now, if during the course of the evening there's still seating available, well, then we may make a decision to allow anybody else who's there to come in and listen, as long as I get the impression that they're going to be polite and respectful, because there are some known troublemakers, because I've been in this debate for quite a while.
What about people that are LGBTQ and Christian?
They're welcome to come in as long as they agree to be polite and respectful. But However, I do have a guest list, so people on the guest list get priority. So if the guest list fills up and we fill up all the seating, well, then that's just that's just the way it goes.
How does someone get on the guest list?
Currently, people within the church, of course, there in Surrey, are signing up for a guest list. People in other churches can basically contact myself or somebody they know who's going to the event and request to be put on the guest list.
Do they have to be a member of a church in order to come?
Well, that's an interesting question because I know not all Christians actually go to churches. I know that as a fact. So I would say no, they don't have to. But if they want to be put onto the list, they need to contact me and at least give me some assurances that they're going to, behave in a respectful way. Because once again, I would point you back to the video of what happened in Victoria. I do not want that happening inside a church.
I see. Okay. So basically, like, you would make an exception for someone who can prove to you that they are Christian, even though they don't go to a church. I'm just a bit confused.
Okay.
How do you tell if someone is a Christian in order for them to go to your event?
Okay, well, that's going to be by referral. So again, it's going to be people that we know from churches that we know. So they obviously, I'll be able to verify that they're Christians. And again, I am making a priority for Christians because I have modified this talk slightly to address specific concerns of Christians, and so that's why I want to give them priority. So some of these concerns that I'm addressing in this talk are not of particular interest to, say, a Buddhist or someone who's an atheist or whatever. So that's why Christians get priority. In terms of somebody who doesn't actually go to a church, well, to get on the list, then they need to, like I say, contact me, and I'll try to, use my best judgment to determine whether or not I think they're sincere. Because I don't want anybody coming in who's just going to cause a disturbance, because that is illegal, although it has been done in the past.
Okay. Do you think there could be a different way to go about it, like, say, higher security so that if anyone makes a disturbance, they could be removed? Have you considered something like that?
No. Again, I'm going to refer you to the video of what happened in Victoria, okay? So there were actually, they didn't tell us, there was a virtual police stand down at that thing, but there were undercover officers apparently in the crowd there, and we had no control there, okay? So even though there were authorities on site, they ran amok. So we have to operate some sort of control at the door in terms of who comes in. Otherwise, we're just going to get into the same chaos again. And I have no interest in going from venue to venue and being basically driven out before I finish my talk. So I have to try to control admission and especially keep out people who I think are going to deliberately cause trouble. I have no problem letting people who may have different views than me in to listen. I mean, I did that all across Vancouver Island, as long as they're respectful and abide by, have some sort of respect for not just myself, but for the other people attending, and wait, say, till the end in the question and answer, and then they can question me at the end. So I'm not opposed to being questioned about what I'm talking about, for instance.
Okay. You also said something on one of your events about people aren't allowed to protest. Is that like you think people aren't allowed to protest outside?
No,
or you just mean
no,
inside?
no. Canadian law allows people to protest. However, Canadian law also stipulates that you are not allowed to protest inside an event, and you're actually not allowed to protest on property. So technically, if somebody wants to protest, they can go right ahead and protest, but they need to do that, say, on the sidewalk or not actually on the property. Okay, and they're also not allowed under Section 176 of the Criminal Code to interfere with people coming and going to the event. So I don't care if they want to protest, or want to bring their signs and stuff, fine, just not inside the building, and we won't be allowing anybody to bring things like placards or whatever inside.
Okay. And so you're just, kind of a summary would be that you decided to have Christians only because you don't want a repeat of what happened in Hope Bay.
Yes, and because a church, in my opinion, Even though I'm not a Christian, I regard it as a sacred environment that needs to be respected, and I don't want to do anything that's going to encourage or facilitate bad behavior in such a venue.
Okay. One more question here. You apparently have some lawsuits related to that presentation going on, or, the last one, like you're going to sue Oak Bay or something like that. What's happening?
Well, we are still in the early stages of investigating our legal options. I have filed charges with the Oak Bay Police against Ryan Painter for criminal defamation. Whether the Crown goes ahead with that or not, I will be pushing or trying to push those charges ahead as a private citizen, even if the Crown doesn't, because I believe I was criminally defamed by Ryan Painter. I will also at some point be pursuing a civil lawsuit against Ryan Painter for defamation. I'm looking at other parties who will remain unnamed for now. I have serious questions about the way the Oak Bay Police Department handled this, because it was, in my opinion, unprecedented to have an event like that where they knew there were hundreds of protesters coming and not have a single uniformed officer there. I regard that as basically police negligence at minimum.
Okay. And now I'm just looking at something that you put in the email about Black press being forced to retract statements, just so maybe I don't repeat the same thing. What happened there?
Okay, well, so when Black press has written stories about Morgan Auger, for instance, you probably know who Morgan is, or has written stories about Rachel McKinnon, the transgender cyclist, they will always say that Morgan Auger is transgender, or Rachel McKinnon is transgender, but whenever they were referring to me, it was always says he's transgender, claims to be transgender, alleges to be transgender. So I just illustrated to them that they are treating me differently than they treat other transgender people. So they basically, essentially apologized for that and retracted it. But that wasn't the main focus of my complaint against Black press in terms of what they published, because what they did was they published the words of Brad Dirks, who said that I spread lies and hatred. And I had said to them, okay, if you're going to publish him saying something like that I spread lies and hatred, you need to provide at least one example proving those claims. So they couldn't provide an example, so they were forced to retract that. And I've also warned Black press about Brad Dirks on other things, because he likes to refer to me as not transgender and just a cross-dresser, which I regard as highly offensive, because that's only that the term cross-dresser has only been thrown at me in my life to insinuate that I'm nothing more than a sexual deviant. So I've requested that he not say that. I've requested that Morgan Auger not say that, and I've requested that Black press and nobody else in the media repeat that, because I regard that as a form of hatred directed at me.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. Okay. So I'll refer to you as trans-identified man?
Transgender identified male, if you need a full written form. Like I explained my transgender identity on one of my blog entries, if you go to my transidentity.ca.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye.